It amazes me what they can do with photography now.
How did you start photography? What made you get interested in it?
I wanted to paint and do artwork. I was always interested in artwork, but I was never satisfied with my skill at being an artist. And I thought if I use a camera, I'll get it the way I want it. But I found that using a camera takes a great deal of skill and experience. So it wasn't as easy as I thought. So I worked at it. I took courses in Boston, and I traveled with, some well-known photographers would take groups up to New Hampshire or somewhere like that for a few days at a time, and we would go in a group, and we would learn from these. They were elderly, and I was young in those days. I wasn't the old one in the party, I was the young one. And we learned a lot from these elderly people because they were very skillful photographers. You should think it'd be difficult for the horses to pull the wagon unless it's level off. I don't remember, but I know it's in Western Mass.
And you went out there to see the maple sugar process.
Yeah. Oh, this is up in Milton. Just one of the back roads in Milton. This one made a big hit in the camera club. They just liked the way it grew. They had been in an ice storm, so it was all icy on the trees. The sun isn't hitting it right. This is down in Hingham. Come down to a little cove down there where private homes, but it's like a little separate harbor down there. It's a pretty place, but I thought it was a barn, but the woman invited me to come into her home down there because it was cold out and I was anxious, but I had locked myself out of the car. I couldn't get in, and so I rang the bell and asked if I could use her phone and call the AAA. And when she heard the story, she was delighted and asked me to come in. And it was Christmas time, and her Christmas tree was still standing there with all the gifts, but they were open, so you could see them. And then she invited me to have tea with her, but I had other things to do, and I had no time for tea. But she was very pleasant, and she wanted to know. She had an old father. She found out that I was of Swedish extraction, and she had a father still living who was Swedish. He was born in Sweden, and he was getting pretty old, and she was afraid to take him home to see Sweden again, although he was up and at it. So I said, don't be afraid. I took my mother over when she was 81, and she loved it and had a wonderful time. And she loved especially flying. She took to flying like an old-timer. And so when she heard that, she heard how well my mother did, she decided she was going to take him. And some of the kids that my nephews played with. It's really the pipes for flooding the cranberry bogs. And when the frost is going to come, they open the gate and the water flows in and floods all the big cranberry bogs around there. They were delighted to play in those pipes, and they echoed and echoed, and they shouted and shouted in there. That's the old-fashioned way to gather. You see the scoop he has. It has little wooden things up there that it scoops the cranberries up. So it was a pretty good way to gather them. Well, they just happened to be unloading when I went by. Well, I was looking for a shot for the camera club, and I used it, but I don't remember how it did.
Mayflowers unload the Mayflower.
It was in photojournalism. We had to have a picture for that. Well, I just entered it in the nature category, and the judge was intrigued with it and liked it very much. And I was surprised because I thought he would say, that's what I usually expect. I am not one who expects to go to the top of the class. And I expect that they're going to find the worst part of it and tell you about that and then forget the rest. But he didn't. He concentrated on this and he talked about it a lot because it made a hit with him. It's just some ferns, a big patch of ferns with an old dead tree in the middle. It's nothing special. I used to have a plant like that growing on my windowsill here. And it bloomed and it made a good impression. It grew high up in the middle window. And I liked the colors of it. They're soft and muted, and they don't shock you out of your... Art nowadays makes me shudder. They have no inhibitions, and they don't use their heads. It's very seldom do you see something like that on the TV in any kind of competitions. They don't concentrate on what I consider art. I'm entitled to my opinion as well as they are. I persist. This TV was empty. There was nothing in it. We got rid of the TV, the works inside, and we kept the frame to use the frame. It stood on the floor, and it was a nice piece of furniture. So we did other things with that. And while he was here, he couldn't resist getting in, and I took his picture, and so he said, I'm on TV, I'm on TV. Got a kick out of that. Oh, that was one of the big storms, August 31st, 54. It was one of the bad summer storms that we had. And trees were down all over the place, but Dale Avenue took it very badly. All the way down you could see trees down on both sides of the street. They were cute. One year I had two little girls like that, and one was the aunt and one was the niece. The aunt and the niece in the same room together. And I was down, the other night, I was down to some meeting somewhere to the school department had, and a woman came up to me and she said, do you remember me? She said, I had you in the second grade. And I hadn't seen her since. And I took a good look, And I said, you were either the aunt or the niece. But they looked a lot alike. They looked like twins, except the aunt was fat and the other girl was regular size. But I guessed right. She looked a little bit the way I remembered her, although she was a mother herself now with her own children, and they were no babies either. So it was quite a few years before I had seen her after she was 8 years old. When you're a child, you have childish characteristics, of course, and you don't have them anymore when you grow up. But that often happens to me when I'm shopping somewhere. Somebody I've never seen before, I think, comes up and says to me, do you remember me? I don't remember. I haven't the vaguest notion who they are. Then they tell me and I can see a little vague resemblance. It's Wayside Inn the day it was burned down. The whole thing had to be torn down because it was all gone, all away. This end of the building wasn't so badly damaged, so you could recognize it. But all the rest of it is gone. They rebuilt it so it looks just like it used to look.
You did like to take photographs of children, didn't you?
I did. Now I don't seem to be interested in much in photography because I don't develop anything anymore. I wouldn't stand in the darkroom and do that again because they have modern things that work fast, and they get them developed before you know it.
You would be working on a computer now, I think, if you were like the age you were then.
Yes, people with computers can make it come right out while you watch. I mean, you take the picture and then you put it in your printer or whatever they call them. I didn't want to sit there and learn how to run a computer because you have to study to learn. And I didn't want to sit still that long.
These are really quite wonderful.
But they don't do anybody any good when they lay in the drawer year after year.
Well, they're in a safe place until you take them out again.
My dad, he was a granite cutter. Come in here and I'll show you some of his work.
Okay?
He never used anything but a little penknife, pocket knife. The fellow across the street was an accomplished carpenter. He had lots of beautiful, expensive tools. He gave them to my father to use, not to keep, but to use, because he said he knew he wouldn't abuse them, and he did a lot. He loved to sit there and carve. So Sam across the street let him have those. He wasn't using them. But my dad tried them, ignored them, and went back to his penknife. Here's one of his little achievements.
Oh, that's gorgeous. A little deer.
And when he developed silicosis. He got,
from the granite dust.
Yes. And he was in the hospital in Braintree. They took care of that kind of problem. And he did this in his spare time up there. And he sold them up there. He sold many, many little carvings of deer, especially. That was a popular one. And he sold little animals that they wanted. And then he carved anything that I wanted. So he kept busy. But when he sold them for $4 a piece. And he made himself a little extra money that way. And he was delighted to serve them. And they were delighted to bring he made little ponies for them. And the kids would tickle pink with them. And the doctor of the hospital used to buy them every now and then and bring to his grandchildren when he went to his grandchildren. Light on as it does at night.
A lamp of discovery.
But in the year of 1000, the Vikings came over here. And in here, if you look in closely, get close, you can see it says Vikings. And that's one of the Viking ships that they came in.
That says Leif Erikson.
Yes.
And how did you make this?
Well, the high school was giving a course in it at night after hours. It's just a piece of flat copper, not too heavy. And then you put your picture on it, and you just follow the lines in your picture and press. And it's thin enough so when you press, the imprint comes through on the other side. And then you reverse it, and you've got your picture there. Then you can make it any size, any type you want. And that's the Vikings. That's the Vikings. And then in 1492, you know who came over then.
Columbus.
Yeah. And that's his year. In 1518...
1513.
13, yeah.
Do you remember his name?
It's either the son or Magellan.
It says Balboa. Balboa.
Oh, I keep forgetting their names.
I've forgotten that. I learned that in school long ago.
Yeah, Balboa. He discovered out west trees in California. That he went as far as that. That's Magellan. And he circumnavigated the globe for the first time. Discovered that the world was round. He proved that the world was round by starting in one place and going west all the way until he came back to the same place, but he never went anything but west. So they knew that if he kept going west, he would come back to the place where he started. And that proved that the world was round. So these four made some kind of discovery.